You walk out to your apiary on a warm June afternoon and you stop in your tracks. Hanging from the front of your hive is what looks like a thick living beard of bees. Thousands of bees clinging to each other on the outside of the hive, covering the entrance, draped down the front of the box, sometimes extending 6 or 8 inches below the bottom board in a hanging mass. If this is the first time you have seen this, your stomach drops. Your first thought is, they are swarming. Or they are about to swarm. Or something has gone catastrophically wrong inside and the colony is abandoning the hive. New beekeepers panic when they see this. I have watched beekeepers make critical errors based on misreading this moment, opening the hive to look for queen cells, shaking the bees back inside, calling experienced beekeepers in distress on a Saturday afternoon, convinced their colony is about to leave. And in almost every case, the diagnosis is wrong. The bees are not swarming. They are not abandoning the hive. They are not preparing to leave. They are doing exactly what their biology tells them to do in response to one specific environmental condition that has become more common every June as summers get hotter across most of the United States. They are bearding. Today I am going to show you exactly what bearding is, why it happens, how to tell the difference between bearding and actual swarm preparation with certainty, and the 5 concrete actions you can take in less than 10 minutes to help your colony cope with June heat without making the situation worse. None of this requires expensive equipment. None of it requires opening the hive. And if you do it right, your colony stays strong, stays productive, and comes through summer ready for fall honey flow. Let us get into it. What bearding actually is. Bearding is a thermoregulation behavior. It is one of the most studied behaviors in honeybee biology because it is so visually distinctive and because it directly relates to colony survival. Here is what is happening when you see that beard on the front of your hive. Honeybees maintain their internal hive temperature within a remarkably narrow range. The optimal brood rearing temperature is approximately 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and the colony will work continuously to keep that temperature stable, even when external conditions vary dramatically. According to research from Dr. Jürgen Tautz at the University of Würzburg, honeybee colonies regulate brood nest temperature to within half a degree of their target through coordinated metabolic and behavioral activity. This precision is critical because brood develops abnormally outside a narrow temperature range. Too cold and development slows or stops. Too warm and the developing bees may emerge with physical defects or shortened lifespan. When ambient temperatures rise above approximately 85 degrees Fahrenheit, the colony shifts from heat conservation to heat dissipation mode. Worker bees position themselves at the entrance and fan their wings rapidly to draw cooler outside air into the hive and push warmer, humid air out. Foragers collect water and bring it back to the hive, where house bees spread it in thin films on the comb surfaces. The water evaporates, removing heat from the air through the same phase change principle that makes sweating effective in mammals. According to research from Dr. Thomas Seeley at Cornell University, this combination of fanning and evaporative cooling can keep the brood nest temperature stable even when external temperatures reach the high 90s. But there is a limit. When external temperatures are very high, or when the colony has reached a population size where the body heat of so many adult bees inside the hive contributes significantly to the thermal load, the internal cooling capacity becomes overwhelmed. The colony's response is to reduce the biological heat load inside the hive by moving a significant portion of the adult population to the outside. The bees on the exterior of the hive, the bearded mass you see, are no longer contributing body heat to the interior. They are dissipating their own metabolic heat directly to the outside air. The bees that remain inside have more volume per bee to cool, more airflow space for ventilation, and a dramatically reduced thermal load to manage. The beard is a cooling intervention. It is not panic. It is not preparation to leave. It is the colony actively managing its temperature by redistributing its population to the exterior. Research from the University of Florida documented that colonies which beard appropriately during high-temperature events show better brood survival, less wax meltdown in honey supers, and lower stress on adult populations than colonies which fail to beard under equivalent conditions. The beard is not a problem. It is the solution. Your job as a beekeeper is to support that solution, not interfere with it. Bearding versus swarm preparation. The fear that bearding means imminent swarming is the most common misconception about this behavior, and I want to give you the specific diagnostic criteria that distinguish the two states with high reliability. You do not need to open the hive to make this distinction in most cases. Difference 1, time of day patterns. Bearding follows a temperature curve. The beard typically forms in the late morning as temperatures rise, peaks in the afternoon during the hottest hours, and gradually dissolves as temperatures cool in the evening. By the following morning, the beard is usually gone and the bees are back inside. Swarm preparation does not follow this pattern. A colony preparing to swarm shows behavioral changes consistent across all temperatures and times of day. Clusters that persist overnight, activity patterns that do not correlate with thermal conditions. If your bee cluster appears in afternoon heat and dissolves by morning, that is bearding. If your cluster persists through cool morning and evening hours, something else is happening and investigation is warranted. Difference 2, activity at the entrance. A bearding colony continues normal foraging activity. You see bees coming and going from the entrance throughout the day with pollen baskets full, foragers moving purposefully, the normal traffic pattern of a productive colony, just with a beard of cooling bees hanging on the front of the hive. A swarming or pre-swarming colony shows different activity patterns. Foraging may reduce significantly. The bees outside the hive show different posture and movement. They cluster more tightly, often facing the hive entrance, with less individual activity than a thermal beard. Research from the University of Sussex documented that pre-swarm clustering shows distinctive collective behavior patterns that thermal bearding does not display. The bees in a thermal beard are individuals, arranged on the exterior surface, engaged in their own cooling. The bees in a pre-swarm cluster are participating in coordinated collective behavior. Difference 3, behavior when disturbed. A bearding colony responds to disturbance the same way any normal colony does. If you walk close to the hive, the bees are aware of you and may take note, but they are not reactive in unusual ways. They do not fly up at you. They do not defend the cluster as if it were a brood nest. They simply continue their thermal management. A swarm cluster or pre-swarm mass responds very differently to disturbance. The cluster is more reactive, more defensive, and behaves more like a self-contained colony unit with coherent group responses. Difference 4, sound. A bearding colony is quiet. The bees on the exterior are not engaged in unusual collective communication. The hive itself may have an active sound from internal fanning, but the exterior bearded bees are themselves quiet. A swarming colony, or pre-swarm cluster, produces a distinctive, high-pitched collective hum that experienced beekeepers learn to recognize immediately. Once you have heard it, you will never mistake it for anything else. Difference 5, and this is the definitive test if you have any remaining uncertainty. Quick visual inspection of the entrance area for queen cells. You do not need to do a full hive inspection. You do not need smoke. In a horizontal hive, you can briefly slide back the cover and look at the bottom of the outermost brood frames that are accessible without disturbing the main cluster. In a vertical hive, you can look at the underside of the inner cover and the top of the frames. Queen cells preparing for swarming are typically found at the bottom edges of frames, distinctive peanut-shaped structures that stand out from normal worker cells. If you find no queen cells, your colony is not preparing to swarm. If you find queen cells but they are open and contain royal, jelly, and young larvae, you have early-stage swarm preparation, manageable but requiring attention. If you find capped queen cells, the swarm is imminent and you need to act within hours. In a bearding colony with no swarm preparation, you find no queen cells. The beard is purely thermal. Your colony is fine. Method 1. Enlarge the entrance. The first and most immediate intervention you can apply to a bearding colony is to maximize the entrance opening. During the spring, when robbing pressure is lower and defensive needs are reduced, many beekeepers keep their hive entrances at full size. By June or July, as nectar flow tapers and robbing pressure can develop, they often reduce the entrance to a smaller, defensible opening. This reduction makes sense for robbing protection, but it creates a thermal problem during heat events. A reduced entrance acts as a bottleneck for airflow through the hive. The bees can only move so much air through a small opening, regardless of how hard they fan. According to research from Dr. Jürgen Tautz at the University of Würzburg, the maximum airflow capacity of a hive is directly limited by the cross-sectional area of the entrance. A hive with a half-inch entrance has less than half the airflow capacity of the same hive with a full open entrance. During extreme heat events, the balance shifts. The thermal risk of an overheated brood nest exceeds the robbing risk of an open entrance, particularly when you are present in your apiary to monitor for robbing behavior during the day. My practice during sustained heat periods is to open entrances fully during the day and reduce them again in the evening if active robbing pressure has been observed. For most colonies and most situations, the benefit of full ventilation during heat events outweighs the robbing risk significantly. This single intervention, taking 60 seconds to remove an entrance reducer, can reduce the bearding intensity within hours and significantly improve the colony's thermal regulation capacity. It costs nothing. It requires no equipment. It is the first thing I do when I observe excessive bearding on any hive in my apiary. Method 2. Create shade. The second intervention is shade, and this is particularly important for hives that sit in full sun during the hottest hours of the day. Direct solar radiation on a hive top can raise the internal temperature of the upper portion of the hive significantly above ambient air temperature. Research from the Institut Technique de l'Abeille in France documented that direct sun exposure on dark-colored hive tops can result in interior temperatures 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit higher than nearby shaded locations during peak afternoon heat. Shade addresses this radiation load directly. There are several practical approaches depending on your apiary setup and how much intervention you want to do. Method A. Temporary shade boards. A piece of plywood or other rigid material placed on top of the hive lid creates an air gap that significantly reduces solar heat transmission. The board should not contact the lid directly. Use small wooden spacers or wedges to create an air gap of approximately 1 inch between the board and the lid. This air gap is critical because it allows convective airflow to remove heat from the underside of the shade board, preventing it from radiating back into the hive. A simple 12 by 20 inch piece of half-inch plywood serves this purpose adequately for a standard hive. Method B. Natural shade through vegetation. Strategic placement of branches, tree limbs, or living plants can provide effective shade for the hottest hours of the day. If your apiary has nearby trees that produce afternoon shade, this is your best option. It requires no maintenance and provides shade exactly when the colony needs it most. For apiaries in open locations, consider planting fast-growing perennials on the west or south sides of your hives to develop natural afternoon shade over a few seasons. Method C. Light-colored hive tops. If you are building or buying new hive equipment, or when it is time to repaint existing equipment, consider light colors for the lids specifically. White or light gray tops reflect significantly more solar radiation than darker colors, reducing the thermal load on the hive. Research on solar absorption in agricultural structures documented that white painted surfaces absorb roughly 30% of incident solar radiation, compared to 70 or 80% for dark colors. For hive lids specifically, this difference translates to several degrees of reduced interior temperature during peak heat. The body of the hive can be any color you prefer for aesthetics or tradition. The lid is where solar load matters most, and white or near white tops are consistently more thermally efficient. Method 3. Water access. The third intervention is ensuring abundant clean water access within close range of your hives. This is often underestimated in importance, but it is genuinely critical during heat events. Honeybees use water for evaporative cooling, collecting water from external sources, bringing it back to the hive, and spreading it in thin films on the comb surfaces where its evaporation removes heat from the hive interior. According to research from Dr. Touts, a colony in active thermal management mode can consume up to 1 liter of water per day during extreme heat events. 1 liter. If that water is not available within close range of the hive, the colony must dispatch foragers to find distant water sources, consuming forager energy and forager time that could otherwise be applied to nectar collection or other colony work. Provide a shallow water source within 50 feet of your hives with safe landing surfaces, marbles, cork, floats, gravel, or floating wood pieces that allow bees to drink without drowning. Refill it every 2 to 3 days during heat events. Once your bees establish a water source, they return to it reliably. Do not allow your water source to run dry during a heat event, even for a day. Bees that are redirected to a neighbor's bird bath, swimming pool, or pet water dish during a dry day will continue returning to that location for weeks after you refill your own source. Train them to your water from day 1 and maintain that training through the summer. The water source near your apiary is one of the most cost-effective thermal interventions available. A shallow plastic tray with gravel costs under $5 and provides ongoing thermal benefit through every summer for years. Method 4. Improve ventilation. The fourth intervention is increasing ventilation through the upper portion of the hive. Hot, humid air rises naturally and accumulates at the top of the hive during heat events. If that hot air has no escape path, it forces the bees to do more fanning work to push it out through the limited entrance opening. Creating top ventilation paths reduces this thermal load significantly. Method A. Offset the outer cover. The simplest approach is sliding the outer cover toward the front of the hive by approximately ½ an inch, creating a small gap at the rear between the outer cover and the inner cover. This small gap allows hot air to escape upward through the hive, while the inner cover prevents bees from leaving through this opening. The thermal effect is significant. Hot air rises out of the hive continuously through the gap, rather than accumulating under the inner cover. Method B. Install a screened ventilation board. A purpose. Built ventilation board with a screened opening can replace the inner cover during hot weather, providing continuous top ventilation without bee escape risk. These are commercially available from beekeeping suppliers or can be built easily from hardware cloth and standard hive body dimensions. Method C. Propped lid ventilation. Place a small wood block, a piece of 3/4 inch wood approximately 1 inch wide, between the inner cover and the outer cover at one of the back corners. This creates a continuous ventilation gap that allows heat escape while maintaining most of the weather protection of the closed lid. This works well for moderate heat events and is easy to install or remove as conditions change. All 3 methods exploit the same principle, allowing hot air to escape upward through the hive rather than accumulating and forcing the bees to work harder to expel it. Choose whichever method fits your equipment and preference. The thermal benefit is real in all 3 configurations.
Time for some fresh
Method
air,
5.
girls.
Monitor internal temperature. The 5th intervention is not strictly a cooling method, but it is critical for informed management. Monitoring the actual internal temperature of your hive so you know whether your interventions are working and how severe the thermal situation actually is. A simple, inexpensive solution is to place a digital thermometer with a thin probe inside the hive, accessing it through a small drilled hole in the inner cover or hive body sealed with a removable plug. Wireless thermometers that transmit readings to a smartphone are available for under $50 and allow you to monitor internal hive temperature without opening the hive at all. According to research from the University of Bern, monitoring internal hive temperature provides earlier warning of thermal stress than external observation alone and allows beekeepers to apply interventions before bearding becomes extreme. The ideal internal brood nest temperature is between 93 and 96 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures above 98 degrees indicate thermal stress requiring immediate intervention. Temperatures above 100 degrees indicate critical thermal stress with risk of wax meltdown and brood damage. A thermometer in your hive removes the guesswork from heat management. You know exactly when the colony is coping and when it is struggling. You can apply interventions and verify their effect within hours rather than guessing whether your shade board or open entrance is actually helping. For beekeepers who want to take their summer management seriously, this is one of the highest value, low-cost investments available. I want to close by reframing how you think about bearding, because I think the panic response is the biggest problem most beekeepers have around this behavior. A colony that beards in response to heat is doing exactly what it should do. The beard is not a failure. The beard is the colony's intelligence at work, recognizing a thermal challenge and responding with a biologically appropriate solution that has worked for honeybees for millions of years. Your job is not to prevent the beard. Your job is to make it easier for the colony to cope with the heat that triggers the beard. The 5 interventions I described today do exactly this. They reduce the thermal load on the colony, so the bees need to do less work to maintain optimal internal conditions. The beard may still appear during peak heat, that is fine, but it will be smaller, will dissolve faster as temperatures drop, and will have less impact on colony productivity and brood survival. The colony will spend more energy on foraging and brood rearing and less on thermal regulation. That is the goal. Watching a beard appear on your hive should be a signal to support the colony, not to panic about the colony. Open the entrance, add shade, refill the water source, crack the lid for ventilation, check the thermometer if you have one, walk away and let the bees do their work. By morning, the beard will be gone and your colony will be back at full strength, ready for another productive day. All sources for today are in the description. Dr. Jürgen Tautz at University of Würzburg on hive thermoregulation, Dr. Thomas Seeley at Cornell on colony temperature management, University of Florida on bearding and brood survival, University of Sussex on swarm versus thermal cluster behavior, Institut Technique de l'Abeille on solar load on hive equipment, and University of Bern on internal temperature monitoring. Tell me in the comments how you keep your colonies cool during summer heat. Do you use shade boards? Do you keep entrances fully open through summer? Do you have a thermometer in your hive? I read every comment, and your experiences from different climates help everyone watching this channel.